All right, welcome back, hunters. Today we're going to be checking out Warcrow, Winds from the North by Corvus Belli. We did a stream yesterday that was just kind of a quick, when I say quick, it was like 3 hours, but a run through of some of the scenarios in this book. We did the first two, which I did not do just as a precursor to any of my thoughts. There is kind of a step-by-step scenario you can kind of go through, and I guess it kind of tells you where to move the characters, what to do with them, to kind of, I guess, cover some of the bases. It would probably be a good idea for you to run through that. I did not, because I'm stubborn, and I just wanted to jump straight to something with a little bit more agency. So I just went straight to the scenarios. Now, scenario 1 is pretty straightforward with the snowstorm. Scenario 2, it gets way confusing. So I did not play with any of the events, really. I kind of just played with the magical kind of moving objective and a point for kind of the melee to fight over, in a sense. So I played it pretty straightforward. Not that any of those events probably would have made a difference, because I got obliterated. Now, I did play against myself. I don't have any local stores to speak of, and as anything kind of outside of Star Wars Legion, I'm kind of up to my own devices on. But this is a game that I was really looking forward to, partially because of the models, which I'll touch on in just a second. So I played the orcs, if you will, but I was essentially playing them. I was playing opposite me as logically as I could. So I still think it worked out pretty well. So starting with the models, and I should touch, I think this starter box, which comes with 7, I believe, 4 or 5, yeah, 7 minis for each side. You get its own dice, which I do appreciate. I tend to like the games that have their own dice. Just makes it a little bit more straightforward, I guess, in a sense. I can understand both arguments for dice and no dice. You do get unit cards for everything in the box, except for this guy right here. He has a unit card in this book, and I don't understand that in any capacity. I think he comes, which I was looking online, he's going to be available for order for a unit and a card, because he comes from another faction / their board game. So, but why they couldn't have included one, card, I have no idea. So that's a little bit of a gripe, is why they didn't give this guy a card, because he does play a part in one of the events. I did not play that, so I can't comment on it any further. We do use custom range measuring things, so all the units are made up of like a 2 range distance. So if you move like 3 and 2, you would move 3, flip the card, move the 2. And I don't mind this. It is a little cumbersome just because of the short side, to get it, up under some of this stuff, but it's not that big of a deal. And this is just for anything longer than what's on these. But the miniatures themselves are, I'm going to say, a mixed bag for me specifically. I enjoyed some of these a lot, and others not so much. So like this shaman priest lady orc thing, my sculpt was pretty messy, especially on parts of the belt. Some stuff bled together quite a bit. I didn't have that problem on other things. Like I think Albork was pretty clean. Thankfully, my Wise Mane, I think, was pretty clean. He had some questionable spots around his face with his tusks, but for the most part, he was clean enough, which is good, because he was one of the models I was more interested in. And I painted these in a very I don't think he got in focus very well. In a very Warcrafty, Maghar orc kind of sense. Kind of an odd standout for me is the Frostfire Herald. The sculpt was pretty good. The casting was pretty good, and I enjoyed painting it pretty good. The Hetman was also decent. Drago. But all in all, I really hated painting the hegemony. I wish I had just gone with a different theme altogether, because this gold trimmed, like, tedious, I just didn't enjoy it. I think it looks okay when it's on the table and they're all together, but the actual process of creating it, I hated entirely. So I don't know what I'm going to do with them going forward, because if I get more of them, I don't want to paint them like that. So, but the miniatures, I didn't have any broken parts or problem pieces that I needed to get replaced, which is more than I can say for the one Games Workshop box that I've ever bought. So that's a plus. The sculpts are fine, other than some of the weird castings, but that is a person-to-person basis. I know there's people who had like missing parts or kind of like miscast unusable parts that they had to be replaced, but I do know that they will replace them for you, so it's not really a big deal. But all in all, I really want more of these orcs, and I'm not thrilled with their color scheme either, to be honest. But I just want more just because of the styling of them. I just think they're cool models. And I would like to see more enemy types or model types or whatever of this style. The other thing, I guess, moving into more specifically of the game, there's a couple things. I guess I'll touch on some of the more unique things to this that I have noticed. You've got this round counter. That their round to turn counter is confusing. I still don't entirely understand this, but I do like the idea of this. So like if this is a round, right? So from 1 to 3 is a round, so that 3 is the end of a round. You could have an event take place at the end of turn 2, so a round is 1 to 3, but the turns are 1, 2, and 3, if that makes sense. So at the end of turn 2, you could have like a snowstorm happen or a creature spawn or something like that, which could really kind of change things up, and you have to think what you're going to do before and after that, depending on the things that happen. And because of the freeform nature, you could have 2 turn rounds where your actions are going to matter more. You could have 4 turn rounds, 3 turn rounds. The rounds aren't set in that way, so you have to decide who of your units you're going to use. In different scenarios, they could really mix things up with this. Once I understand it a little bit better, I think this is a good thing. So a tentative positive there, I think. They do use unit cards for the actual units themselves, and they are multilingual with front and back. I don't want to play games that don't have reference cards like this. I know Warhammer and stuff, they're starting to do like war scrolls that are of a similar thing. But like, if I can't just have all these cards laying here with me that I can just quickly reference, you know, what do they move with? How many wounds do they have? What are their skills? All that kind of stuff. That is just such a massive difference. I don't have to go flipping through a whole book or anything like that. It's just all right there. And they do have that for all 4 standard units, and then you get 2 extra elite units. So like these are the same character, but one is like the named fancy version and one's just the generic version. But the fact that they do have these unit cards, and they're bigger than I'm used to, but they're pretty easy to understand, and there's a spot in the book that kind of goes over all the spots in a local central area that you can reference if you're not sure what that stuff means, other than one thing that I will reference here in a second. But for the most part, it's pretty clear, and it's pretty easy to understand at a glance. You know what you're attacking with, you know what you're doing. So that's good. I already touched on the dice. That's a positive for me. I like unique dice. I don't want to have to use a bunch of generic dice. Now, the other thing that there's two other things that are specific to actual combat that I really like that is unique to this game for me personally, and that is the mage combat. When you go to cast a spell, let me see, might be able to show you this a little easier. So your spell is here, and you can roll modifiers. So basically, in order to cast the spell, you have to roll your willpower check. You have to pass that with just getting one standard hit. But if you modify your spell, it's going to be harder to cast, and you add these black dice in. So you could add 2 black dice to get these benefits into that 3 orange dice, and you can fail even getting to try to roll those dice. But if you do, you're going to roll a more effective spell. But if you roll any hollow, let me find the page here. If you roll any hollow exclamation points, you're going to suffer some negatives. So the way that I processed it was kind of like you're bargaining, kind of like dark magic. You're borrowing some power. You're flying a little too close to the sun, and it might come back to bite you. So there's some negatives that come with that risk. So there's kind of it feels very wizardy. It feels magical. It feels pretty cool. You have that choice if you want to play it safe. But if you need to dig deep and find, something special in a moment, you can bargain with that to try to make that happen, but you might suffer some consequences. So the spellcaster side of things I really like, actually. I don't like the spellcaster that comes for the orcs. I don't know if we're going to get more of those, but that's kind of underwhelming. The Frostfire Herald, I do like quite a bit. Again, I've only played the 2 scenarios, so I'm not entirely sure. I don't have a giant frame of reference for those specifically. The other thing is melee combat is pretty representative of what I would want melee to feel like in that way, if that makes any sense. So if I charge, I'm going to get benefits for that because I'm initiating. But in any combat, if I come out on top and I do more wounds to you than you do to me, because you can do wounds on defense, which is handy for some characters, basically to represent that forward momentum, basically you get a free push. So if I win combat, I can push you back. So in the orcs case, who have a low conquer value, if I engage with the bucklermen, who have a pretty good conquest value, and win combat with them for an exchange, I can push them back and get them away from those objectives, because I just need to keep them away so that my low conquer value people can score on them, if that makes sense. So it's kind of it feels like an accurate representation of pushing the field and being aggressive, and it being represented in the miniatures in a cool way. Kind of the same thing with clearing a unit. If you clear a unit, you get a free full move action afterwards in melee. So you get kind of some more of that momentum being represented, which I think is cool. So those are the main big takeaways. The moving, there's some kind of cool command skills that you can do, but given the limited things that I have, I didn't play a ton with the skills that the characters have. I did use the War Surgeon to do some healing. That seemed pretty effective. And then at the end of their activation, they just have a passive heal that seems pretty good, all things considered. But I can't really touch on much more than that. Now, I do want to kind of touch on this book because I have some critiques or some gripes or whatever you want to call it. So at the beginning, which if you just buy the Winds from the North box, you do not get the rule book. You get just this little booklet that does not have everything in it from what I've seen online and what they've talked about in different demos and stuff. Some of that's just not even talked about in here, I don't think. So I wish they would just provide the full rule book. I'm sure there's a cost preventative to that. But if they just wanted to raise the cost of the starter box by like $15 or something and add that book in as part of it, I think that would be a good thing, because I do feel like I'm missing some information, and at least if I had the full rule book, I know it's in there somewhere. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. I am not entirely sure. But you get a little bit of lore stuff at the beginning of this. This is the reference that I was talking about for your character sheets or your character cards. And this might be touched on somewhere else, but this right here is not explained, I don't think, in the couple times I've read through this trying to figure it out. That symbol, that lightning bolt, is not talked about here. What that is you voluntarily stressing your character to gain benefits. So essentially, if again you need to get something done, you can hamper yourself potentially, but at the end of the round it's going to go away anyways. So you take that risk to stress yourself to gain some extra benefits. So you're going to gain some guaranteed symbols or some extra things for switches, which, to be fair, the switches, I didn't touch on them for other like reviews and stuff that's unique. I do think the switches are positive. I think it adds an extra little mini game to your combat, so you could trade symbols for extra damage, extra defense, debuffs, all that kind of stuff based on what you roll. So you might only get 1 damage, but you might make them vulnerable for whoever's going to attack them next. I think it's kind of interesting, and there could be a lot of variety to that, so I'm kind of interested to see what they do with other units down the road. So this is more or less complete, I think, but some of it gets a little lost. And it goes through most of your common stuff in these few pages. And then it takes you into the tutorial scenario, which, again, I understand the concept here, but that's, I don't know, maybe it would be better with somebody else in person to go through a step-by-step like this. But I wish they just did a little bit clearer of a job explaining how the game is played in the order that you play it without me having to go through the motions, I guess. Now, you could read through that and probably come to the same conclusion. That's just my kind of ignorant opinion of that specifically. Now, again, something that I don't like. So here's your kind of debuffs and stuff, which again, I would like a kind of a quick reference, which there's a quick reference on the back. But I would like stuff like the debuffs, the tinge debuffs, that kind of stuff. Some of the keywords and stuff to be a little bit more condensed into like a page that I could have reference to, or a bifold or something. But that's more of a preference than anything. The information's here. It's just, you got to flip through it. So I might do what I did with the Elder Scrolls books and go through and tab these pages with labels just so I could get to them quicker. There's your tinge stuff again. You get some more lore, some story stuff, and then you have your actual scenarios, which for the most part are clear, but they do use some weird information. So like some of your stuff's here on the back, even though this is where it's telling you like your setup and your parameters. And then some of the stuff is even like further back here. So the layout of this seems kind of confusing to me. And like I said, scenario 1, pretty straightforward. Scenario 2 gets very confusing for me because there's a lot of special rules. This stuff over here doesn't really make sense in a vacuum. And maybe, again, if there's somebody who does know this, could stand there and explain it to you, it would make perfect sense. But as somebody who's just trying to read it and figure it out, I was a little lost. Now, I have also seen online that the scenarios that come in this starter book are a bit of a mess. And the stuff that comes from like the Beyond the Winds from the North box and the more kind of like full-size scenarios are better. I don't have that stuff, so I can't really comment on it. But for the most part, my experience with Winds from the North, with Warcrow, was very positive. Now, again, I do have the benefit. I did this on stream. So I was kind of playing it with you guys. If you want to see that stuff, we still have at least one scenario in this book to go through, and I kind of want to get the Winds from the North or the Beyond box. Make sure you hit that subscribe button so you know when I go live to do that stuff. It is way more fun with you guys there and hanging out, and I appreciate all of you that do stop by and check that stuff out. Also hit that subscribe button because we're close to 500. Shameless plug, sorry. Anyways, I have really enjoyed this, and it makes me, now that I've played it, kind of want to touch up some of these models a little bit more and get the Beyond box. I want to get some more models. Their release cadence is a little slow, but I get it. It's a new game. They're pacing what they have. There are other factions coming. There's the Scions that are like fleshy monsters that look kind of interesting. And I think the Feudum, which is more like traditional European medieval, which I like better than, I guess this is more of like a Spaniard-esque, like medieval aesthetic. I'm not sure. Although the models that come in the Beyond box for them look pretty cool. And there's some cool dwarves and stuff. So they got a lot of cool stuff coming. I've heard of some Griffin models potentially. So I'm interested. I'm really wanting to check out some other stuff from them, get more of a handle on the round counter so I could play with some of those events and things. But yeah, overall, a more than positive experience. And given the relatively low entry cost to get some cool models and the stuff you need to play, I think it's kind of a no-brainer. And it's brand new, so it can only go up. Not that it even needs to, because it's pretty good already. But that is going to be it for this one. Again, if you want to join us when we do the last scenario in this live on stream, hit that sub button so you could see when I go live. I don't know when the next specific thing's going to be. There's going to be some more painting coming up. I'm working on Rebel Troopers for Legion. There's going to be some Star Wars Legion battle report streams probably next weekend. But yeah, I appreciate you guys being here. Thank you for checking this out. Again, hit that like button, hit that sub button. It helps more than you know. I will see you guys in the next one. Bye, guys.